Christian here, and here is my first museum video since the USS Nautilus Submarine Force Museum in 2019. This museum was recommended to me by my friend, the Nooga Railfan. Also, this video was my 300th video. The Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History is located about an hour outside of Atlanta, Georgia. This was my first stop on my first big adventure since 2019. Now, the centerpiece of the museum is the General, but the museum has a lot of Civil War artifacts. To guns, to many other things from the Civil War, the museum builds up the events that led to the Civil War and also goes into detail about the events that led directly to the Great Locomotive Chase. The museum also talks a lot about locomotive history. One of the coolest things about the museum is that right before the property of the Glover Machine Works was demolished in the late 1990s, the collection from the Glover Machine Works was donated to the museum. And that included wrecked parts, pieces, and all that other fun stuff. But it also included a tank engine built for a coal company in Tennessee that only saw active service for 6 months before being repossessed due to lack of payment. They also have the remains of an unfinished locomotive that was to be built by the Glover Machine Works. After walking through some Civil War artifacts, looking at the two locomotives, and watching a movie about the Great Locomotive Chase, after you walk out of there, you literally walk down this stretch of hallway where there is painted railroad track on it. There's a few models, and there's even a small model with a small scale of the bridge that the Union soldiers tried to burn down to stop the Confederates from chasing them. And then as you walk through a tunnel, there it is. There is the oldest steam locomotive that I have currently seen, the General. Now, back in high school, back in my freshman year of high school in 2006 to 2007, I remember we played a piece in band, and it was my favorite piece we played, the Great Locomotive Chase. That is how I found out about the Civil War event, where Union soldiers hijacked a Confederate train and tried to sabotage as much of the line as they could between Atlanta and Chattanooga in an effort to cripple the Confederate railway system. And finally seeing a locomotive that was used in this event was awesome. This to me is one of, not just because I am a rail fan, this is one of my favorite events to read about in the Civil War. I think the whole story about how one person would not give up until he caught the locomotive was just amazing. The fact that he started off by foot, chased after by a maintenance car, and then chased after by a few different locomotives, including the Texas, before catching up to the... I just thought it was neat to finally see this locomotive. The General is a 440 type of American steam locomotive built by the Rogers Machine Works in 1855 for the Western and Atlantic Railroad. It was saved from scrap for the historic event and even operated at special events for the span on and off for about 70 years. It was retired in the 70s and was donated to the museum. This is also the first Smithsonian museum I have ever visited. And I must say I was quite impressed with the museum. I didn't exactly really know what to expect, but it is really amazing how it builds you up over the course of your visit up into the event of the Great Locomotive Chase, from the start of the Civil War to the Locomotive Chase, and then finally you see the General. Anyhow, I'm Christian. I hope you enjoyed my first video from my first adventure in years.